Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today for our 7th installment of the Birch Project's 10 training modules on supporting youth in schools and in the community, trainings for paraprofessionals and mentors. This module is titled Responding to Challenging Behaviors. Like the previous modules, we will be building on information from the previous 6, so I encourage you to engage in those as well. Before beginning with our content, I would like to introduce the Birch Project to those of you just joining us for the first time. The Birch Project is the Behavioral Health Integrated Resources for Children project. Its mission is to provide professional development and resources for schools, as well as to strengthen the coordination of behavioral health supports across school and community agencies. The Birch Project is led by faculty members from UMass Boston and UMass Amherst and is sponsored by Boston Children's Hospital. For more information, please check out our website at umb.edu/birch. My name is Whitney Walker, and I'm a recent graduate from the school psychology program at UMass Boston. And the majority of my research, has involved improving the behavioral health systems for students. And I'm excited to be here to present this module to you today. We would also like to extend a huge thank you to the paraprofessionals and mentors who made these modules possible. They provided us with invaluable insights into the work that they do, which helped us to develop the module you're about to view. The learning objectives for this module are for participants to become familiar with 1, the 4 common functions of behavior, 2, 4 steps that one can use for responding to challenging behaviors when they occur, and finally, reinforcing prosocial behaviors in order to decrease the occurrence of challenging behaviors. On today's agenda, we're going to first go over the 4 common functions of behavior to understand where some of these challenging behaviors may be coming from. Next, we will look at the steps in responding to challenging behaviors and how to reinforce the prosocial behaviors. We will then briefly discuss restorative justice practices and how they can help to mend broken trust following challenging behaviors. And we'll end the training by reviewing logical consequences for children based on the mistakes that they made. So in the previous module, we learned about the fostering the well-being of both students and staff. It was discussed that well-being and self-care are impacted by culture, history, systems, and social factors. Therefore, we need to take these factors into consideration when caring for ourselves as well as others. Additionally, we learned that there are some strategies that can help us at work when we are experiencing a stressor. So we know that we must take care of ourselves, and when we are at work, there are ways to help assist in those experiences. Finally, there are some strategies we can support youth in developing to add to their coping toolbox. The more tools everyone has, the easier it is for the adults and students to regulate their emotions, and behaviors to help feel better and stay safe. So that brings us to our first topic in discussing the 4 common functions of behavior. Behaviors are generally to meet a need. Some of children's behaviors can be caused by an unmet basic need. If a child has not had their basic needs met, we can't accurately assess the function of the behavior. So we must make sure that children have their basic needs met first. Once we do that, we can then evaluate, is the child acting in this way to, one, escape undesired or difficult activities or demands, two, to gain attention, connection, or help from adults or peers, three, gain an activity or an item or an activity or something tangible, or four, are they trying to meet a sensory need, doing this behavior to relieve pain or to feel better. And these functions can be remembered with everybody eats, EATS, standing for the four functions of behavior. So in order to identify the functions, we must ask ourselves why to the behavior. Can you think of 1 to 2 children who you can identify the function of their behavior? Is it escape, attention, tangible, or sensory? Okay, great. So now that you have that student or two in mind and their function, we're going to learn about what is called a competing pathway. Basically, what that means is that we're going to think about the function of the behavior and what need that it is meeting for the child. Then we're going to find an alternative behavior that can replace the challenging behavior, but still meets the same need or function for the child. We will start on the left here with the setting events. And these are things that influence the behavior. So for example, feeling sleepy, being hungry, or being out of your routine can make a person more irritable. Then we'll move to the antecedent. This is an internal or external stimulus that acts as a trigger for the behavior. Maybe it was the room becoming very noisy, for example. From here, there are several pathways. It can lead to the desired behavior, which would be ideal, the problem behavior, an undesired action that results from the trigger, or an alternative behavior, an action that cannot be done at the same time as the problem behavior, but is not the desired behavior either. Our goal is to reach the point of maintaining consequence for the desired behavior. And in order to do that, we want to find a way to get the child to the same function of their behavior. We learned about some of this in Module 2, understanding the ABCs of behavior. For more understanding of the antecedents, behavior, and consequences, please refer to that module. Next, we are going to learn about the steps in responding to challenging behaviors. First, we will define the problem. What is the problem behavior? Second, we will consider why the student engages in the behavior. What is the function? Next, we will teach the chosen intervention to the student. These can be interventions like those that we reviewed in, in Module 2, or in Module 5, I'm sorry. And finally, we will continue to reinforce the new skill and monitor student behavior for effectiveness. The interventions that are implemented should be monitored to inform adjustments or changes to the intervention or implementation of the intervention that has been chosen. We want to make sure that the challenging behaviors are corrected, but we also want to promote the prosocial behaviors. And reinforcing these positive skills will decrease the challenging behaviors. Another point that should be highlighted is that working with challenging behaviors is extremely difficult, and changing these behaviors is not something that's going to happen overnight. So extinction bursts occur when there is an increase in the frequency or intensity of the challenging behavior when the extinction method is being used. So basically, the behavior is going to get worse before it gets better. An example would be when someone puts money in a vending machine. He then pushes the buttons indicating his selection. If nothing comes out of the machine, it is likely that he will push the buttons again and again and again. This increase in pushing the buttons can be defined as an extinction burst. Therefore, we need to be consistent and make sure that the child knows what's to be expected. In the example of the vending machine, the person will eventually stop pushing the button, realizing that they are not going to receive anything from the machine. Reminding a child of the expectation, frequently reinforcing the new replacement prosocial behavior, and waiting out the challenging behaviors will show the child that their needs cannot be met with the challenging behavior, but can be met by their prosocial replacement behavior. So if a behavior is occurring to receive attention, it is commonly known in the field as children seeking attention. However, we would like to think of this as children seeking connection. So if the function of a child's behavior is to receive connection or help, we can prevent, teach, and reinforce in the following ways. We can prevent these challenging behaviors by directing the other children that are around the student to ignore them, and intentionally remove your attention from the child as well when they're displaying the challenging behavior to seek connection. Remove your attention by not calling on the student or diverting your eyes or paying attention to another student who's displaying a prosocial behavior. Still maintaining proximity and supervision of the student who is displaying the challenging behavior if you are responsible for their supervision at that time. Teach appropriate behaviors through modeling how to get attention appropriately or connection appropriately. And then as soon as possible, praise and reinforce the youth after they have used the prosocial behavior to get the attention or connection. So practice time. Young students sometimes are so excited to eat with each other and socialize so that they are not actually eating their lunch. Social interaction is reinforcing this time, and eating food is less reinforcing. Therefore, we need strategies to encourage eating and reward with social time. One solution might be, if you can eat quickly and quietly, you can have more time to chat at the end of lunch. What would you do? Next, we will look at behaviors with the function of escape or avoidance. To prevent these behaviors, we can tell children what the expectation is and remind them staff are here to help. This could include modifying tasks, such as telling the student that if they do 3 problems, you can come help them with the 4th. And giving timeouts and ignoring the behavior is not effective because the function of the behavior is being met. The child is seeking to get out of having to do the required tasks. Teaching the student how to properly seek help if the task is challenging can also help. Rewarding them with a break meets the need for escape or avoidance while still achieving the desired task completion. To reinforce these positive behaviors, start small and gradually increase the difficulty level while increasing praise for new tasks. So another practice time. A student seems to be avoiding eating in the cafeteria and finds different reasons to avoid it, such as requesting to eat lunch in the nurse's office or eating in the hallway. Escaping the lunchroom is reinforcing. What would you do? Spend time talking to the youth about what is contributing to their difficulty in the lunchroom. Let's say the student attributes it to the noise and activity level. You can then work with the student to find a seat that is closer to the door of the lunchroom, which you both feel may be less noisy. You also decide to work up to full time in the cafeteria and decide to plan to eat. You decide to plan to let them eat in the office or the hallway for 50% of the lunch period and slowly decreasing the duration of the time out of the cafeteria. A large group of students don't line up at the end of recess when the bell rings. What would be an effective strategy? What would you do? One solution could be implementing a system where the students get additional time outside at the end of the week if they meet the expectation of lining up when the bell rings all week. This will require clear explanations of the expectations. If a function is for a tangible item, we first can prevent these behaviors by telling the student what they need to do to get the item. What is the expected behavior they must meet? Alternatively, you can give the child a choice of 2 items. This forced choice option allows power over the selection process for the items you decide. We teach this by not giving them the item when presenting the challenging behavior, though. We can show understanding and teach them how to request this item and how to accept the answer no with deep breathing. Reinforcement can be done with praise for requesting the item appropriately or making a choice based on the given options. Another practice time. A student refuses to line up after recess because he wants to continue playing basketball. What is a prevention strategy? One strategy could be reminding the student 5 minutes before lineup, letting the student have more time to play basketball at the end of the day or during free time if they line up when asked the first time. The expectation can be set that the basketball will be taken away for the following day if they continue to refuse to line up. Or they can line up and get the basketball the next day. What about a teaching strategy? A teaching strategy could be practicing outside of recess time how to return the basketball and how to line up after the whistle blows. You can time the student and see how quickly they can perform the behavior. What about a reinforcement strategy? The behavior can be reinforced by praising the student for meeting the expected behavior or providing them extra time to play basketball at the end of the day or week, depending on how long they can wait for the reinforcement. What about logical consequence or redirection? We have not covered logical consequences yet, but later in the module, you will learn that one logical consequence for this behavior could be a loss of privilege. Finally, the last function of the four common functions of behavior is to satisfy sensory needs or self-stimulation. We can prevent these behaviors through encouraging movement breaks before activities. If you know a student has a hard time sitting still for long periods of time, taking a movement break could meet that need. Additionally, distracting the student with a task can prevent the behavior as well. And timeouts are not effective if the behavior serves this function and, and the behaviors persist. We can teach the students replacement behaviors that serve the same purpose and is not unsafe or disruptive. For example, teaching a student how to use a stress ball instead of getting up and walking around the room may help to decrease the need for self-stimulation and is less distracting for all. We can also teach students how to use appropriate physical activity. These behaviors can be reinforced by praise, by praising the student when using the new behavior. Practice time. A student is showing signs of being too overwhelmed by the loud noises of indoor recess. What could you do to reduce the overstimulation for a youth? One solution may be to get noise canceling headphones or to have the student move as far away from the noise as possible. What new skill could you teach? You could teach the student to focus on other tasks, such as breathing or counting. What behaviors would you reinforce? You can praise the student when they are using the new skill, such as breathing or counting. The next few slides will be a multiple choice and true and false pop quiz. Which of the following is not a function of behavior? Escape, attention, control, or tangible? The correct answer is C, control. Control is not a function of behavior. Adverse experiences often lead to feeling unsafe. A blank behavior might not be as ideal as the desired behavior, but it can still promote positive outcomes by linking to the function of the behavior. A, supportive behavior. B, applied behavior. C, alternative behavior. D, timed behavior. The answer is C, alternative behavior. Reinforcing behaviors that cannot occur at the same time as the problem behavior and decreases the problem behaviors. Although it is not the desired behavior, it still decreases the problem behavior. Next, we are going to talk about reinforcing prosocial behaviors in order to decrease the negative behaviors. Reinforcement is providing a desired item or activity as a result of a student meeting expectations and increases the likelihood that the behavior will occur again. Some inexpensive options that are often used as reinforcements are stickers, high fives, pre-COVID, and extra time with a desired task. In order to figure out what reinforcements may be effective for your student, you can use a preference assessment. Some children are motivated by snacks, some motivated by time with a preferred adult, some are motivated by time to play a game. So figuring out what the preference is key to success. If the student isn't motivated by the reinforcement or reward, there will be less desire to engage in prosocial behaviors, and it likely won't meet their need. Promoting positive behaviors across contexts. You might recognize this image from the third module about engagement at the tier 1 level. This is showing that focusing on positive behaviors to prevent challenging behaviors can be done across all settings and not just in the classroom. To do so, teach the expectations and routines. This may include visual schedules. Supervise the space you are in by scanning, moving, and interacting with students. Pre-correct student behavior, again, focusing on the prosocial behavior and not challenging behavior, and positively reinforcing the prosocial behaviors. When setting the stage of any environment with these preventative strategies, a more positive climate can be created. Next, we will have an overview of restorative justice, or commonly referred to as RJ practices. Remember Jackson from Module 2? Take a minute to review his case information. He's a 10-year-old Asian American student, moved here from another town or school district 6 months ago, has difficulty making and keeping friends, rarely turns in homework or completes assignments in the classroom. Jackson loves playing with Legos, helping and being a teacher's assistant, drawing, playing video games, doing magic tricks, and playing basketball. His observed behaviors are refusal to stay in his seat, picking on other students and school staff. In other words, swearing, calling them names, laughing at them, stealing from others, bolting from the classroom, hiding under his desk and refusing to communicate or explain his reason for doing so, yelling, "Are you kidding me? That is so stupid. I'm not doing that," or things like that, when given directions to complete a task, and headbanging. So consider Jackson's observed behaviors and how they might make you feel. Possibly increasingly frustrated or agitated. That would be normal given his observed behaviors. And maybe it is the end of the day, the end of a very stressful day, and Jackson ran out of the classroom after you have set the expectation that he acknowledged of him staying in the classroom in his seat in order to earn time playing basketball or video games. How do we regulate our own experiences, our own responses when we have these feelings? This is a place where you can use some of the coping skill strategies from Module 6. Additionally, you can work through the problem you have with Jackson's behavior with restorative justice, which we will define in more depth shortly. How do you mend the relationship or relationships after feeling as if Jackson wronged you or another student, perhaps? After Jackson and you have calmed down and are ready to process, a restorative justice circle or practice could help teach Jackson the impact of his behavior on you and the importance of mending the relationship in a healthy manner. So restorative justice has its roots in Indigenous communities and has three big ideas. One, repair. Incidents can cause harm, and justice requires repairing that harm. Two, encounter. The best way to determine how to do that is to have the parties decide together. And three, transformation. This can cause This can cause fundamental changes in people, relationships, and communities. Restorative justice practices look different in different contexts and should be adapted appropriately for your specific context. When there is a relationship that needs to be mended because someone feels they have been wronged, restorative justice takes out the power between people and allows room for apologies, regardless of the position or role of that person. And it's seldom that children receive apologies from adults. So this presents an opportunity for them to receive that. Not only for the student to feel as if they are being heard, but that they are cared for and deserve apologies when they're wronged also. RJ allows for recognizing a problem while being sensitive to students who have experienced traumas. Harsh consequences may bring up traumatic histories for students, and being able to talk through and problem solve teaches children how to repair relationships in a healthy manner. Also, these practices can be used with other adults as well as children. Many adults have also never learned to mend a relationship in a healthy manner, but that doesn't mean that it's too late. Restorative justice practices can help teach adults and children alike. So to close up the content, we will go over logical consequences. Typically, how we discipline kids is related to how we were disciplined as kids. However, those practices may not result in helping the youth to develop skills and strategies to foster more prosocial behaviors and preventing challenging behaviors in the future. Natural consequences are things that happen on their own as a result of the behavior. So, for example, forgetting your homework may mean getting a 0 on the assignment, whereas logical consequences are steps that we take to help children see that the behavior comes with some unpleasant side effects. They aren't punishments because they're not punitive nor physically or emotionally damaging. So, for example, having your children go to bed early the evening after they refuse to go to bed on time. The consequence is related to the behavior and it makes sense for the situation. It's also unpleasant enough that they won't want to suffer the same consequences again and again, so it serves as a motivator to changing their own behaviors. Here are 3 types of logical consequences. You break it, you fix it, loss of privilege, and positive timeout. An example of you break it, you fix it would be, excuse me. An example of you break it, you fix it would be Adam jiggles the table and causes water to spill. The teacher directs Adam to clean it up, or maybe another student accidentally knocks another one down on the playing field. The teacher promotes the first student to help the second student up, ask if he's okay, and go with him to get the first aid if needed. Next, an example of loss of privilege would be one student insists on using the watercolor brush in the way that damages the bristles. The teacher tells that student that she cannot use watercolors during choice time until she's reviewed correct use of the brush and has shown the teacher that she knows how to use it without damaging it. Or another student's class job for the week is to be line leader, but he leads the class to lunch. But as he leads the class to lunch, He leans into the classroom to wave hello to a friend while the class is taking an assessment. The teacher tells the student that he has lost the privilege of being line leader for the day and temporarily gives that responsibility to another child. Later, she checks in with the student to make sure he remembers and understands the expectations for walking in line so he can resume his job tomorrow. And finally, an example of positive timeout would be if a student disrupts a math lesson by calling out answers without raising his hand. The teacher sends him to the calm down corner. In, in the minute or two he spends there, the student calms down using self calming techniques the class has learned, and then he returns to his regular seat. Lastly, discipline should be developmentally appropriate and linked linking the are linked to mistake. For example, if a four-year-old broke a glass while throwing a ball, they cannot sweep it up themselves, but they can stand by you while you clean it up. However, if that child was 12 years old, there's a greater likelihood they can sweep up the glass on their own. Another practice time. Let's say a teacher turns off the lights so the student can see the directions that are listed on the slides. A couple of the students on your caseload start throwing pencils and making animal noises. What would you do? So first, let's think about the function of this behavior. What are they trying to accomplish by throwing pencils and making animal noises? It could be assumed that they are seeking attention, connection, or help. How can the students receive this attention or connection or help in an appropriate way? So that brings us to the end of our module. If I had to name 3 big takeaways from this module, we hoped that you learned that 1, responding to challenging behaviors starts with identifying the function of the behavior. Keep in mind that all the child's basic needs should be met before assessing the function of their behavior. 2, to be consistent. Let the student know what to expect and reinforce the prosocial behavior. And 3, restorative justice practices improve school climate through reduced racial discipline disparities and reduction in repeated offenses. Responding to challenging behaviors can disproportionately affect children of color. So here's another opportunity to check with ourselves, our biases, and what practices for all students and the decisions we make based on their behaviors. Here are some additional resources that can be used to further understand natural and logical consequences and appropriate discipline. Here are the references used in creating these slides. And we want to thank you for attending this module. Please complete the evaluation form on this link on this slide. And at our website, www.umb.edu/birch, you can sign up for our subscription list to get more information on best practices related to supporting the behavioral health needs and well-being of youth. We would love to hear from you. So please reach out to us with thoughts or questions. And thank you for all that you do to support our youth.